I want to thank my sponsor, the Apple House here in Terre Haute, Indiana. They are fantastic. Tom and his team at Bloom Brothers are the source that we go to for everything from all your landscaping needs, annuals, perennials, all the different trees, shrubs, you name it, all the floral pots for your porch. They have it all, and their customer service is bar none the best. I just cannot highly recommend them enough for all of your landscape needs. Give them an opportunity. Go tell them Penpoint sent you. Welcome to Penpoint. I am so thankful you're here on this episode as we are going to talk about servanthood. What does it mean to serve and walk like Christ and serve like he did? Scripture says that he came to serve. And so are we supposed to serve too? We're going to talk about that with one of my absolute favorite people in the world. And he's my favorite person in the world, or one of them, because he's none other than my brother. And many of you have heard, if you've been listening for a while, me talk about my brother. And I'm just excited that he is going to be here today. And we're going to talk about this very important subject. So, my brother, Ransom Becker, welcome to Penpoint. Thank you for being here today.
Well, it's an honor to be here. So excited to be have made it to the guest list.
I know. Well, it's been a honor we've been trying to, for those of you that I know kind of a little bit about our family, Randy and I call him Randy. It's just some things die hard, but we've been talking about this for a while, but God's timing is perfect and this subject is perfect for now. And so I'm just excited that you took the time and you're here on Penpoint, and we're going to just dive in and talk about servanthood and what does it mean to serve. And the reason I chose my brother is because, for one thing, I love him so dearly. And my whole life, I've looked up to him, I've honored him, and I've watched him. I've watched him from a young age. I can remember when we were in high school, and I saw him want to go to a different type of church service because he wanted to learn more, know more, experience more. And then from there, I saw him go on a Young Life trip, and I thought, wow, I thought that was really neat. So from high school to going to Young Life, and then just modeling by going to church while he was in college, and it just goes on and on throughout adulthood. I've watched him, this journey of faith and prioritizing the Lord. And so because of that, I just could think of no one better than him to talk with about this subject. So, Randy, when we were little, I feel like we kind of our mom taught us about what it was like to volunteer and give of ourselves. So, what's your earliest memory of that, just in general?
Well, in thinking, when I think about serving, it's easy for me to just think about my church experiences. But when I go back, I realize that in college, in my fraternity, um, I voluntarily took on the role as our public relations chair.
Yeah,
And I'd forgotten about that, but a bunch of teenage guys really don't care about volunteering.
yeah.
But I learned that you could win an award for your chapter based on how much service your chapter did compared to other chapters across the country. So I'm like, well, why not give it a shot? So I'd organize all these events and try to get people in the fraternity house to rally. And I
Yeah,
don't even remember if we won anything, but
yeah,
it's like, well, yeah, it was kind of in my DNA, I guess,
yeah.
at a younger age.
Well, and so as you're saying that, of course, I'm thinking about college and some not so serving memories that I can think of too, which is like, thank God for grace. But when I take it back in my memory, as you and I were kids, I remember our mom instilled that in us from an early age because she always volunteered. Our grandmother volunteered. She was heavily involved with Red Cross and American Cancer Society, and our mom was deeply involved in volunteerism and would take us along when we were kids, whether it was uh, at a clothing resale or selling a cookbook for charity or even at the church doing drives and then I think about going to visit elderly relatives and just
Hmm.
pouring into others. And so as I've been preparing for this, also I'm thinking about pre-college, high school, but then when you talk about college, I love that you already had that instilled in you because you already had been walking in that, maybe even not realizing until you look back that it was something like you just said in your DNA. And so from college, I know just from what I remember, you going to church. And did you start volunteering and serving in a church environment as early as college, or was it more when you got out on your own as an adult that you got involved in the church?
It definitely was not in college. Uh, there were some stumbling years there, but post college, I remember getting involved in the church, but not necessarily in a serving capacity, um, until I got into I don't know, I was probably around 30, um, and joined up with a associate pastor who wanted to start a church. And so that
Oh,
was really
wow.
my first experience in just diving into to giving of my time, was planting a new church. And this was in um, the middle of the city of Seattle when we lived in Seattle.
Okay.
And that was a really rich experience.
So, okay, planting a new church is not for the faint of heart, from what I hear. I've not done it myself, but I know that it sounds like was your first leap, and that was a mighty big one. Because, I mean, you're taking on all kinds of responsibilities, but at the end of the day, it's not only leadership, but it's giving of yourself to sacrifice maybe something more comfortable, which was your other church, and taking a chance to broaden the reach for the Lord, and that in a bigger city had to have been pretty powerful.
Well, it is. And you know, you're nudged by the spirit and your pastor to
Yes.
step out of your comfort zone. And people just have to get things done, whether it's
Yeah.
in your wheelhouse or not. And I was put in charge of managing the worship team.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm not an artist or anything, but someone's got to like herd the cats,
Yeah.
get the songs picked, make sure
Yes.
there's a rehearsal and all of that. So you need an organizer, and I'm an organizer. But it's just interesting how, like, here I am running a worship team, and I'm not a not a very musical person.
Well, I don't know about that. You do play the guitar, which is something else I admired about you. But it's so funny as you're talking and I'm listening. I know you and I've known this, but I'd forgotten some of that. And when I'm thinking about how you're doing this in the church and your experience with leadership and really delegating, it reminds me of our pastor at church just recently. We've been talking about the gifts of the Holy Spirit and the motivational gifts, if you will. And there's the office, the gift of like leadership. There is a leadership gift, administrative gift, delegating gift. Like not everybody has that gift. And so I think about when you're describing that, well, I mean, that's part of serving. You stepped up where there was a need, and that's part of it. Sometimes you just have to step up and you may not have been comfortable, but that's how we grow. But you actually, through as you're an engineer, you kind of are used to processes and organizing and delegating. So it's actually something that naturally you were built to do. And so what I want to just say about that also is many of us look around and see others doing these leadership roles or a role that we wish we could do that maybe we don't feel is for us, but that's where we have to look at our own personal gifts and where you're inclined to serve in one area, someone else may be more inclined to serve in another. And it doesn't all have to look the same and be grand in the eyes of some, but it's not a comparison. We all, just like the eyes and ears and feet and hands, I mean, we all are a different part of the body. So,
Right.
well, how did you get from the leadership in planting a church and really the inner workings of a church environment of serving, because we know all churches have some either mission project, it could be a local service project, serving just in functioning of the church is what you were, just describing, to getting involved in a much more global way. And how did that even happen? Were you seeking that or did it find you?
Well, I think we have to go back to our mother because in college, I had the opportunity to spend a summer in England at Oxford, and she made that happen and just felt like that was something that would be a good experience for me. But it pushed me out of the country to experience being on foreign soil.
Yeah.
So then, after being in Seattle for many years, I had the opportunity to move our family to the UK, and we ended up living there several years. And so, being out of the country and being a foreigner was something I became very experienced in. So, eventually, we moved from England to Houston. Um, and settled there and found a great church where we've been for many years, Clear Creek Community Church. Um, and when I turned 40, our church, I don't know if you've heard of the author Bob Buford, but he
Mm.
wrote a book called Halftime. And it
Okay.
was really geared for people approaching middle age and starting to think about, okay, well, what am I going to do with the rest of my life?
Yeah.
And it was designed to get you to think about not just your gifts and talents, but also your passions. And I remember we ended up writing words like that described our like most our talents and then our passions. And then we had a follow-up with one of the pastors of the church. And my gifts have always been in the organizational administrative realm. Um, my passion words I remember were students, worship, and international.
Wow. That's so
And
interesting.
the pastor picked up on that and he's like, well, have you ever thought about getting involved in global missions? And I'm like, no, I hadn't. But it was from that seminar that I did and that follow-up conversation that the idea was presented to me. And so I joined what was at the time a very small missional team. And then I ended up forming a small group out of that grew a little bit. And then eventually I connected with someone who became a missions pastor at our church. And he invited me to go with him to Ukraine to
Wow.
explore developing a relationship with a group of people that wanted to start a church in Ukraine. And so in 2005, I did my first mission trip to Ukraine, which ended up being the first of many trips. Uh,
Yeah.
this was Lviv, Ukraine. And
Okay.
these days, a lot of people have heard of Lviv because it's
Yes.
been in the news associated with the war and all. Um, but anyway, that's how I got started.
Okay. Well, I'm just fascinated by that because again, like I knew that, but some of it's just fascinating to hear. And I think so many of us take for granted our own soil and our own freedoms and our own opportunities, and maybe to our fault in a way that we don't even realize, how fortunate we are to have the freedom to worship, the freedom to have churches all around us, to choose what denomination or how we want to worship online now, but in a small group, big group. And there's so many countries that they don't have those freedoms, the opportunities, or the knowledge, and are seeking that help. So I think that's really neat that you got to be a part of that at that time, pouring into people that maybe has prepared them for where they are in the season today in the world. And so through that, what would you say would be one of the things that surprised you? And it may not be that it was in Ukraine, it may be somewhere else you've been, because I know you've been other places, but what's something that surprised you as someone going on a mission trip outside of culturally, but just like their relationship or their desire to know more about the Lord? Was there something that kind of gave you that thought that, wow?
Um, it may be hard because I've done so many of these trips to like pinpoint how I felt on a specific one because the thing that I always feel after a mission trip is that I've received way more than I gave. You know, you
Hmm.
go on mission thinking, okay, we're gonna go do things. But I always come back feeling like, well, maybe we helped, but I was blessed so much more. And it's always for me the people. I mean, you're encountering people that are worshiping the Lord in their language, in their culture, but they're just people raising their families, going to work, um, trying to grow their church and reach their community. And it's like, wow, we're all across the world doing the same thing. And
Yeah.
you got the same struggles and the same sins and just different contexts and languages. And um, so it's always amazes me, just or just continues to impress upon me how we're part of the global church.
Hmm.
Um, and we're not in it alone. And it's not like America and everybody else. It's all of us
Yeah.
um, sending and experiencing and learning from one another.
Well, I think that's really good, important information that you just shared because I think oftentimes as Americans, and it could be like this even in another country from their view about other countries, but just speaking from our perspective, I think sometimes we do see it's like us and then everybody else. And as a Christian, you want to start to really look at things as the world. You know, the Lord did say, go make disciples of all nations. So that's not just the United States, although we can disciple in our own backyard. So being a servant of the Lord, going on a mission trip, we have youth in our church right now in a mission trip in West Virginia. So it can be done in your own community. But he did command us with that great commission to go make disciples of all nations. And there's a reason for that. So we are to go touch others. And that being said, you know, I know you've been to the Ukraine many times, which kind of interestingly got you into an opportunity to spend some time even in Russia. And I know you've been to Spain and Portugal on mission trips, I think, and most recently Brazil.
Mhm.
So I want to hear from you just in your different travels. Do you feel like your role has changed a lot throughout there? Like, have you felt yourself grow in either confidence or an ability to have a different role in that mission and maybe even training others up in that way? Has that happened in your experience?
I think so. And what, when I say I've learned, I think my church community has learned just as we've approached how we've approached global missions. You know, way back when we thought we were exporting our model and our way of doing things because we'd figured it out. And I think in those early years in Ukraine, we learned that, you know, taking all of our tools and our supplies and our musical equipment and like
Yeah,
shipping it over there and putting on programs that we've evolved to where now we're just show up.
right.
And when I say show up, like there's still preparation and doing things and bringing things, but it's not about us and what we're bringing. It's about, I think, mostly being present and being willing to engage. And so when I'm leading a trip, I feel like if I've gotten everybody down there and back
Yeah. That,
healthy and safe, that that's my biggest praise.
yeah.
Um, because it's just a big ask and a big for all of us just, you know, to get on that airplane and go
Yeah.
and just experience the journey. But I think it's so to me, it's not forcing so much, but letting God do the work
Yeah.
through us and through our host church and community that we're interacting with.
So, what if you are listening? And I've got a couple thoughts. What if you're listening and you're like, okay, my church doesn't offer a specific mission, particularly opportunity globally, or even really in America? They have a different focus potentially for their outreach. How would you recommend if they were interested? Do you think, I mean, there's got to be many ways to go about it. Do you piggyback off other churches? Are there organizations that you've worked with that you believe might be good starting points? Because not everybody, I think, would know where to start.
Um, that's a great question that I don't have an easy answer for because I don't have names. The simple answer is yes, there's ways to do that. I just don't have at the tip of my tongue the names
Yeah,
of that. But you can go sign up and join up with organizations that will take you on mission if you want to do
yeah,
that. If there's not something through your local church. Um, what we talk about here is the concept of your circles of influence.
right.
And we apply that to the Great Commission when we think about um, Judea and Samaria and the ends of the earth. And so, like for any individual, what is your Judea? What is your Samaria? And what is for you the end of the earth? And,
Mm,
I think it's a good aim and challenge to someone to encourage them to step on foreign soil and leave the country. But it doesn't always work that way. But we can all evaluate, like, well, maybe my Judea is my very local community or collection of neighborhoods or within a 5 mile
that's,
radius,
wow,
just
that's really, yeah.
people I can plug into. And maybe my Samaria is my greater city or region.
Hmm.
And the ends of the earth may be the United States.
Yeah,
So it doesn't always have to be that way. I just
yeah.
think it's good to have the concept of like, what are my reaches and how can I engage?
Well, I love that because that piggybacks on another question, which is, and that was a really good um, piece of wisdom because I think that that can be so overwhelming that you just don't do anything because you don't know where to start or how to approach it. And so you really breaking that down by, okay, you can start small and expand as you get more exposure and experience is a great way to do that. So thank you. Um, when somebody I can think about so many times I talked to my husband about, well, obviously, Kurt. I've talked to him years ago about I would watch him with his passions. And I even admired you, obviously, with your passions for serving. And I would sometimes feel less than because I didn't have the same ones, thinking they were so noble and great. And why didn't I have that as much? Just that passion in my heart, but I cared in my heart. So I got frustrated a little bit with myself until I really did realize we are all part of the body and we all do have a different gift to give. So applying that to serving, giving of yourself, whether it's in the church or locally, I think for those that don't have the passion or desire to go and do the mission work, starting, like you were just saying, like in the smaller way, in your community, in your church, finding a way to start seems like a good place to start. And so I appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Start somewhere.
yeah,
Just
you got to start somewhere.
start somewhere.
So I want to go back a little bit because earlier in our conversation, we talked a little bit about our childhood, but not a whole lot. One of the things I personally know about your story that you may or may not be comfortable sharing on Penpoint Podcast, but one of the things is that we did lose our father when we were really young. I mean, I was 11, I think you were 13. And I know that we didn't really talk about this much until later in life, but you had already um, really had an experience with the Lord, if I'm not mistaken. You had already I believe, been saved and had that experience outside of the way we were raised in the Episcopal Church. We had a confirmation that we declared that at a certain age, and but just doing it on our own as adults, it was a little later. So I would love to just have you share just how through that experience, I think you went to a camp or something between that and going through Young Life. Just, I feel like you had that foundation to catapult you. You know, just having that experience as a young person before we lost our father, do you think that just had to have framed some of where you've gone from there to here, if that makes sense?
Yes, well, I was 14
Oh, okay. I was
and
off a year.
I was I accepted Christ like 3 months before our dad passed away. So I didn't have a lot of prep time.
No. But isn't that just so God that you had some, that you had that
Yes,
to hang on to as a
because
son losing his
um,
father?
it's so clear in my mind that you know, God does the saving and prepares the heart. Uh, so he knew what he was doing, and he knew what I was about to face.
Mm,
And I was in the ninth grade, but I remember just a few months later, I must have been in the spring, I remember some people in school talking about, hey, well, once we get to 10th grade, we can go to Young Life. And so that door opened up. And through that, there was an opportunity to just meet some cool guys who were there who were just a good influence. And,
yeah.
um, Young Life does such a good job of reaching kids on the margins, uh,
Yeah.
not just looking for people that have it all together.
Yeah.
So that was a real blessing to just transition from early believer, losing a parent, and having a group like Young Life be there to provide a lot of support.
Well, I love that you shared that because I've been privileged to know your story and you shared your testimony with me before. I know that there's a scripture that I'm going to read it because if I don't read it, I'll read it incorrectly. But John 15:16 that said, "You did not choose me, but I chose and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit and that you should abide. So whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you." And you put that in your story as just something that has been in your spirit, that the Lord is, you kind of had this innate knowing when life was tough. And life gets tough. And we both experience that, as a lot of people have. Tough things happen in earlier years, and sometimes it's throughout, and sometimes later. But I love that you put that scripture as one of your kind of go to foundation scriptures because I think that for many of us, we forget that what we're doing as servants is we're expressing the fruit that we have, the good fruit that the Lord has given to us, and we're sharing that fruit. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about, is that we need to take the good fruit that the Lord has given us and help disciple in however way we can, but how the Lord showed up for you and did that for you at a young age. It may not have been till years later that you went back in your thoughts and realized how he was showing up and preparing you for his purpose for you, which he has a purpose for all of us. So I think that's really kind of cool.
Yeah. And he keeps, I mean, I look back just moments in life and I love, in scripture, in many places, talks about God's compassion for the widows and the fatherless. I've
Yes.
always just felt protected and many times have been rescued when I needed to be rescued.
Well, speaking of being rescued, this is just a little fun factoid that I think is a perfect time for me to say this, but your name, the name Ransom, which is a family name for those that don't know that about our family, your name Ransom actually means to rescue.
I
I,
didn't even know that.
well, let me be the first to tell you that I think it's so beautiful that the Lord has rescued all of us, frankly, but how you just are acknowledging that He has rescued you more than once, but that your name is is to rescue and help others. And that is what you're doing by serving. And I think that you've been a great example to not only me, but you've led your family, you've led my nephews, your sons, and taken your fabulous wife, Helen, along with you on many of these journeys, made great friends and had great experiences. So there's so many benefits to serving. And we've kind of touched on serving in the church, in the community, globally through missions. Um, and one thing I do want to just add before we start to close is that I know there are people that I touched on this earlier, but that may not see how that can fit for them. So I do believe that there are those that can still contribute to a mission trip, to a big serving opportunity in another way, whether it's, some people it's financially that you got to raise money to go on these trips. So there's those that we appreciate that they have the means to help in those ways, but also it's preparing by getting supplies or administrative things behind the scenes. Is there anything else you can think of that someone could do that may not be ready to actually take the step to travel and go, but that has been instrumental in the preparation or participating?
I think those are the things, and it could be someone going on a mission trip, and you haven't necessarily been approached, but you could think, okay, well, I'm going to be more aware of this, and in the future, see what I can do to just support them. And I mean, the best thing is just through prayer.
Uh,
Means
I'm so glad you said that.
so much, but yeah, it's maybe, it's like, hey, do you need any supplies? Are you pulling some things together? Or, our we don't do real active fundraising for our trips, but we do create opportunities for people, on a quieter level who want to contribute. And so, I mean, there are ways you can contribute financially to people going on
Yeah.
mission. So, um, yeah, there's plenty of ways. And I reach out to people regularly, encouraging them to take that step. But you always know, like, okay, they're thinking about it, but they're not ready, and so you just back off. And
Yeah.
um, but then there are others who, sometimes they'll say no, and then a few weeks later they're like, I've been thinking,
Yeah. You got to plant the seed and then the Lord does his
and
part. Yeah.
lo and behold, they're signed up and they're ready to go. So I don't, I let God be God, and I encourage people, and some I nudge a little bit, but we all are on our own journey, and God's working in us in different ways. And I encourage people, if the opportunity's there and they're kind of interested, it's like, well, pray about it. And I hope one day people get to experience that, because
Yeah.
it really is a beautiful thing.
Well, I love that you shared that because honestly, you said it before too, that when you give, whether it's in a big global way, on a trip, traveling overseas, locally in your church community, you get so much in return. And a lot of times when we have tough things happening in our life, it helps us to get outside of ourselves and focus on others. And somehow miraculously, we feel better because it does feel better to give, than to receive, as it's often been said. Is there anything you have on the horizon? Should we be the first to hear or no? Any
Well, it's
big
funny.
plans?
Yesterday, one of our elders, I just was like, so
What's next?
what's next? And we just had a casual conversation, and there's always planning and discussions going on, but no breaking announcement, but I'm willing to bet there'll be something down the road.
Well, I am too. And I just want to thank you. If there's any other tidbit or fact that you want to share that you don't think we've covered that you would like to share, this, please let us know. This is your opportunity, or you may have said it all.
I think I've said it all. Again, I would just encourage people to if going on mission is something you've thought about in any way, to just, you know, be in prayer and be open to the opportunities when they arise. Um, the biggest blessing is always just the friends that you make in another country who love the Lord, and just to get to interact with them, worship with them side by side, pray with them in different languages. It really is it's just a huge blessing to do that.
Wow, that's something that I have actually never experienced. So maybe one of these trips, your baby sister might have to come. So you never know. It's on my it's out there. I don't know if it's at the top, but I know a global mission trip is something that, to be honest, because I think that's one of the great things about having these conversations is someone else may be feeling what I'm feeling. I've been a little intimidated, and I don't know why, because I've traveled internationally and not nearly like you have, because you've obviously lived overseas. But I've been a little intimidated by, I think, the other country, or being off my center a little bit. I'm a little bit more comfortable when I know my surroundings. So I think that may be part of it. I'm not sure, but it's definitely something I'm going to reflect on. So I was not expecting that to be a thought that I would share, but I did. And so now someone may be holding me accountable. I don't know. But I just want to thank you, and just for being on this episode of Pinpoint. I just have loved this conversation, and I love you, and I admire you so much. And I'm just grateful that I have a big brother like you. So thank you. And I close each episode with a pearl of wisdom, and we've had so much wisdom shared in this episode. But the pearl I want to share today is that the Lord has asked us to go and make disciples of all nations, and He asks us to serve and give of ourselves. But sometimes we need to meet people where they are, and that could mean that we need to feed their stomach before their soul. So we need to meet people where they are and not come in hot. Sometimes that can be hard, because if we're on fire for the Lord and we are called to disciple and share Jesus, but sometimes we just have to be discerning about how to do that. So I want to just encourage you to, as my brother shared, just start through your church or in your community. But we are called to serve. Jesus served as our Savior, and He's the best example. So I want to encourage you and thank you for joining us on this episode of Pinpoint. Thank you for watching Pinpoint. If you are interested in hearing more content like this, we would love your support. You can support Pinpoint and our ministry by going to my website at libbypendergast.com, and there's an opportunity to be an angel donor. Also, there's a QR code that we will have attached to this episode that you can donate that way too, and we appreciate you so much. If you have ideas for a guest or a subject you want to hear, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you for supporting Pinpoint.